hard investing. In opposition, in government, we have WSTC ASA, and opposition, we have FAM. On emotional or specialized schools, without further ado, can be Prime Minister. Here.
We first have to understand that specialized education, such as sports or arts, are underappreciated in the status quo today. And we believe that in context of this debate, we believe that a lot of these subsidized specialized education is not cheap. Hence, we believe. This is why we believe that a lot of people. It's very hard for a lot of people to make it in these kinds of fields and in the fields of sports or arts. And we believe that these subsidies are extremely important for these individuals to grow and develop to grow and develop their talent, and as an individual who wants to pursue such fields. We believe that the obligation that we are talking about here is that the obligation of when we want to value whether or not that person should go back and contribute towards the local field. And the local field that we're talking about is the place where the place or the state that subsidized these individuals to get those kinds of education in the first place. That also includes the universities, that includes the state, the hometown of the state that subsidized them in the first place. So what happens here is that the contribution that we're targeting is monetary or financial help from that individual, or even tutoring or skills and as a human resource to help other individuals or other growing individuals to sharpen their talent. To sharpen their talent in improving their skills, or even contributing in the networking of such places. In reputation or endorsement, so that these places are able to get better sponsors. Sit down, please. To get better sponsors at the end of the day. We believe that the delineation here is that we believe that these individuals have an obligation to contribute significantly towards their local field because of the very fact that this state-subsidized specialized education is not cheap. What we're talking about here is that this education in particular needs specialized facilities and specialized resources in order for these universities, in order for these facilities to be able to facilitate these individuals. So hence we believe that the beneficiaries are the ones that accept these subsidies, and that's why we believe that these individuals can have that obligation. So before I move on, yes.
In your policy, how do you determine what is a significant contribution? Because if you're talking about monetary contribution, what are taxes enough?
We believe that the taxes that that you're trying to talk about is not enough, because not only is that tax now stretched out to all other fields as well. We believe that the kind of contribution that we want is a contribution directly targeted at these kinds of fields because of the very fact that these fields need it in the first place. So let's look at the first principle. So firstly, under my first argument, is the principle of reciprocity. We believe that when the government already subsidizes you and allows you the opportunity to get that kind of education, not only does this take away from the tax money of the society. Hence, this is why we don't only see the monetary benefit that you take away from the society as your obligation to pay back. We also see that once you take that subsidy, you taking that opportunity means that other people wouldn't be able to take that opportunity as well. And hence, we believe that by doing so, this is when you have that obligation to give back to the community, give back to these individuals that also need the agency to improve themselves, and that also need the medium for them to be able to pursue such fields as well. We believe that the local development is critical to the growth of not only these states but also these contributors as well. Now, what we mean here is that when it is hard to make it in the arts and science, arts and sports fields in this context, we believe that without subsidy, these individuals wouldn't have made it, wouldn't have been able to become successful in the first place. We believe that this is how it differentiates when they will come out here and say that this is your effort, and hence you should not be obligated to pay back to others. We believe that these kinds of subsidies and these kinds of facilities and resources that are not accessible in another context of where you aren't being given that subsidy, we believe that it's extremely important that you do give back to society, because they give you that opportunity without which you wouldn't have made it in the first place. Sit down, please. Secondly, so let's move on to the second argument. How we are able to improve the local outlook and hence improve the specialized education improve this education in the local fields, in these local fields. Sit down, please. We believe that once these individuals contribute back towards these local fields, we believe that it will raise awareness of these local fields on those subjects of study. What we mean here is that, for example, when these individuals are able to give back in the form of raising awareness or showcasing their talent, or having projects to improve local art awareness or local art scenes local art scenes. This is how we are able to raise acceptance on these fields of study, because not everyone is okay with the idea of the government spending on things or spending on fields of study that don't benefit the economy. We believe that when these individuals understand and finally see that these fields are able to improve these local fields by improving the art scene, improving the state of the art scene of that local society. This is when individual, for example, having murals or having street art. This is when the individuals will be able to fully discern the benefits of these subsidies in the first place, and hence raise awareness of raise acceptance on these kinds of fields. What happens then is that the local development and growth is further developed exponentially. How that happens here is that when a lot more people are contributing towards the local field of study and towards the local field, this is when better facilities and better resources are able to be garnered in order to achieve better education in these local fields. We believe that hence this is when a lot more people are given the opportunity to pursue their dreams. A lot more people are given the opportunity to become sportsmen or sports person or even artists. We believe that hence this is how we are able to develop the local playing field, and hence able to improve those individuals that also want to pursue their dreams. Thank you.
Unfortunately for side government, this is not a debate about obligation. This is a debate about additional obligation. Because while we agree on the opposition that everyone shares a minimal responsibility to contribute taxation so the state is functioning, an individual who obtains a scholarship as a result of state failure to provide sufficient education resources does not have an added obligation to remain bonded to the state for a significant amount. The position of the opposition is simple. First, we think that a bonding of individuals is both principally unjustified and is going to cause more harm to the development of both that person and the community, and we would suggest that the world is far better off without it. What are we okay with? We are okay with unbonded scholarships for every single person. We will let them finish their education, go as they please, do another degree if they want to, and they can keep all their money. I think the position of the op is quite clear. In principle, we will extend this to all other loans the government gives as well. First, responses. First to their model. Like, if they are going to say that they will have significant financial contribution from this individual, and they're also going to make them do tutoring for a significant amount of time. This person is going to be heavily crippled. They won't have the money to invest in the training they individually need. They won't have the money to find pleasure from the sport that they eventually do. You will have more dropouts at the end because they don't think that the outcome is lucrative enough to stay in the school that you sought them out to be. But the second, tutoring skills. If you're going to make them do high amounts of tutoring, but they don't want to do it, they hate it, and it absolutely has nothing to do with their career, you're going to end up having worse off tutoring classes that make people more and more disempowered from the sport. The only thing worse than not having a football coach is having a football coach that hates you and wants you to opt out of that sport because he's suffering as well. So actually, we think you make it worse. But the second part of this debate is about reciprocity. According to them, if the state gives you, if you pay taxes to the state also needs to contribute back to the community. Like, two things I'm going to say here. First, if you pay taxes to a state that is supposed to function, and I'll later put the state is dysfunction as a result of this failure, and therefore you have to take up this loan to go into this school, we think the reciprocity is not your burden to the state, rather it's the state's burden to you, because the state failed you, not vice versa. If a community is suffering, the burden ought not to be on an individual who is literally taking out a loan because they're poorer. The burden should be on the state. The state should increase taxes, they should do as they please, but the individual should not suffer from it. But the second part of this was about local development. According to them, the more contribution we have, the better awareness we can give the public, because now the public apparently is going to be really happy. Like, the first thing I would suggest is that the more you force these individuals into these schools, the more horrible backlash you would get as a result of it. Communities that are poorer, that have to rely on your loans, are going to become more and more hateful of your state as a result of your state literally forcing poorer individuals into opting to this. So the awareness becomes worse, and contribution doesn't equate to development, and I'll prove this in my argumentation. First, why we think you don't have an obligation to the state. The first thing I want to suggest the Prime Minister did not have was why the schools were created to begin with. Like, the first thing I would say is the reason for specialized schools is a result of education systems failure. There's too much focus on grades, on academic results, on the fact that it's a mold for a perfect student in terms of academic achievements and prioritizing like the sciences and things that are mainstream. Second, it often results as sports or art being an extracurricular activity that doesn't receive the same attention, airtime in local schools. Third, it doesn't have a specific requirement for individuals, so we don't breed talent in these schools. Even if you're great in a public school, they often don't incentivize you to do it because there's a prioritization of other skill sets. All this is a result of state failure to implement sustainable education systems that incentivize individuals to opt into these systems as a result of it. On top of the fact that if someone is poor, they have to take up a loan as a result of your state being unable to give you the sufficient amount of welfare that is needed for you to function as an average individual to have that freedom of autonomy. Because in their world, rich people who can afford private classical art schools, they don't have the same obligation. They screw over the community the same amount according to your principle, but they are in your world literally omit from this obligation because they are richer and they are more capable. This means that the conditions that forced you to opt into these schools were created by the state. If anything, there's reciprocity not on your behalf, but on the state's behalf to correct this failure. Therefore, we think as a result of state negligence, you have no more responsibility than an average individual through taxation. But the second, even if they're going to say that it's in principle justified because communities benefit from it, every time a community benefits from your individual labor, you are in a worse and worse off position. Literally, there's a lifespan to an athlete. Every year you spend training is one less year you become a sustainable athlete. So great, communities become better, but they also suffered from the state. I think every time you are working on behalf of the state gets to be in a privileged position it doesn't deserve to be. So I think in principle, this is unjust. The government cannot dismiss this principle and say, it's all right, we are okay with the principle, because you are literally victimizing individuals every single day. Second part, why we think you harm individuals and communities. The first thing I'll suggest, as a result of this model, you will harm the entrance of people into these schools, because people enter into these schools for sports and arts on a very high barrier anyway. On top of the fact that their communities and families say this is an unsustainable career, you probably won't become very rich and support yourself in the future. They have to go through all that barriers, and now you tell them they're bonded to a local community. They can't fly overseas for a long time. They have to teach for high amounts of hours. They have to pay a significant amount of tax. According to you, these individuals are actually opt out of opting to these loans to begin with. This means people who could have had talent, could have been really good footballers, really good artists, would opt into mundane careers. They will hate themselves for every single day because your loan excludes them from having a possibly lucrative career. Or second, they have a delayed entrance. They'll think twice about it, and when they enter, they'll be too old to play sports, or they didn't learn the skills and they'll be catching with everyone else. You have shit your talent in your work. Or they will take up other loans, like private loans, work odd jobs, and you have individuals suffering because your loans are inexclusive and horrible. This proves that on a comparative, things become worse for that person that enters into this university. But second, communities. Firstly, I'll suggest more individuals opting in is a horrible thing. We would rather on a comparative, either none, which is like really unrealistic and a worst case, or some consenting, wanting individuals. Because we say this is preferable. Because in your world, if they hate the job they're doing, or they're unwilling to be bonded to your local communities, we say they're either going to do a worse off job, or they're literally going to cause more harm to the local fields. Why so? Because the first thing you would suggest is investors aren't going to see this as attractive. They're going to see this as a coerced community that's doing this as a result of a chore. So you don't make investors more likely to invest. In fact, we think few individuals, even if they fly overseas and they never come back, are actually more lucrative. I'll point to a few examples, right? Like Samuel Eto'o and Didier Drogba, when they left Cameroon, they worked in like English Premier League clubs, then they went to Shanghai, even though they never came back. The fact that they were successful one-off individuals meant the investment came back to Cameroon, like the Manchester United Development Fund and Barcelona went into those areas because they were successful people. In your world, they wouldn't. And in your world, development is internalized in a local market that is coerced, that doesn't want to make itself better. And at that point, development becomes so much worse for the people you say you want to protect.
Recognize that coming from opposition, you have two very conflicting narratives. First, they tell you that specialized education here is shit. Government don't do anything for you. It's a state failure. But then they say that we'll just leave it at that. If we're not going to encourage any sort of contribution from individuals who have made it, I don't see how specialized education under their side will be something that is ever better in their side. Now, I understand that Amrit in some part of her speech said that the case they wanted to defend was that a world where nobody opt for specialized education and specialized education is something that is dead. But I don't think that this is something that is good for them, because I think some people necessarily will always have the passion and the talent that inclines them towards these specialized fields. The problem with that then is this: these people who are disprivileged in our world that we're trying to help fare much worse under their side, because you leave them with nothing. And now they need to suppress themselves or limit themselves or go for other things that are less satisfactory, less rewarding for them. I think that's a burden they need to defend. That's something that Amrit took on in his speech. What will my speech look like? First, I'll respond and contribute to this idea of the principle of reciprocity and the impacts of what this does. And number two, I'll address how we make the world a better place in our world in terms of outcomes. I'll bring back the bits of Amar's case that they didn't engage with. Firstly, contributions, right? They conceded that there is a principle of reciprocity because they say they're okay with taxes, and that, yeah, you already give back in terms of taxes, so that's something that's good because giving back is generally a good idea. Now, this is the response to that. You're okay with giving back, but then the question then becomes, how do you best give back, right? And this is where taxes are not something that is sufficient, because taxes do not trickle down to specialized education because of the priorities of the government. So I'll contend the state failure argument later, but I will tell you that the state is doing the best that it can because it has other priorities to balance, right? The fact that this is a specialized community and specialized interest means that it needs to take a back seat to the general interest of a society that the state needs to cater to. The fact that there are still abject poverty, and the ways to fix that is to improve the industries of science and technology, economics and businesses. That has to be the priority of the state. And unfortunately, this specialized education takes a back seat. So we don't think that they get the benefits from taxes or whatever. What we think should happen then, that's why we believe that when these subsidized individuals come back and help, that contribution is one that directly impacts the local scene, or more directly whatever institutions offering this specialized education. So that is something that is monumentally more impactful than their side, right? Then they told us the burden of the state, the burden here is from the state to you. You don't owe the state anything. So we think, right, that like, look, even if we accept the fact that the state failed you, you had to make it your own way. The fact that this is specialized education, so arts, sports, whatever, this means that the growth and the support networks in the local community were crucial to you being able to access opportunities, networks, and the ability and skills to showcase your talents in the first place. The reason that you are anywhere within this specialized arts career is to the contribution of the local art scene, and you could not have made it without them, right? So we feel that you do have a burden, if not to the state, then to the local art scene who made you what you are today. But number two, they told us that it's unfair, this added obligation, because you cripple people easily, heavily, and you victimize these people who have succeeded. Now, we think that over here there's a gross misrepresentation. We never said that you have to contribute significantly financially and tutoring and all those. Like, those are all not the burdens that we took. Those are examples to help you visualize what possible ways these people could give back to. We don't think that we're going to force them to do this. We think that they should be giving back in these ways, and we give them the discretion to opt which way will help them best give back to the field. So that's the discretion that they still have the choice, right? Okay, Amrit, let's go.
Yes, they can choose and they opt to leave. But the motion says you would make them significantly contribute, but you won't significantly contribute. How does your model meaningfully change this community and you say it's left behind?
We believe that they should all be doing this. So we would really like them all to do this. This isn't a policy debate where we punish people for not doing this. This is just saying that if you have accessed these specialized art education, you should be giving back significantly, and that is one that makes the world a better place. That's what we stand for today. But let's talk about how we make the world a better place, right? We think that they told us that you neglect the arts in status quo, and we say, yeah, this is how we fix that neglect and help make it better. And this is where we feel that they grossly did not engage adequately with things that Amar talked to you about. Amar talked to you about how these contributions are very significant in a few ways. You get more resources to these schools. So if they contribute financially, then you have more pools that you can build more badminton academies and all those sorts of things. That means the education you can provide to people who want to opt in are better. But number two, you can also meet more demand. You can subsidize more people. You make this education more accessible to people who are interested. But the second fold, that was very important, that they really wanted to trade off, and why that's fatal for them, right, is that you up the awareness and the appreciation and the appeal to these sort of specialized fields. This means you increase the opportunities for you to showcase your talents when you contribute in the form of a local art gallery or Damansara Performing Arts Center. This is the stage, literally, for people to get the talent, but also increases publicity, right? So the scene develops more generally. More people are interested, more people are able to access this specialized knowledge, and the local scene gets better art talent and all those skills. The example they gave you was Samuel Eto'o and all that. We think that's not mutually exclusive. If Lee Chong-wei makes it big in the Olympics, you also get the publicity you have. But we think the world is much better under our side when Lee Chong-wei significantly contributes, when he shows up to the Purple League in KL and plays along for publicity, or when he builds his own badminton academy. Those are the sort of contributions that make the world much better under our place, that they would rather live without. We don't think that side opposition today fights for the people who are interested, who don't have access to enter into these specialized fields. We believe that it's unfortunate the government cannot do this, but since the government cannot do this and has bigger problems to worry about, the burden then is on the people who have benefited from the support and networks of the local art scene, who have benefited from this in order to give them back. Like, you've made it already, and you made it thanks to us. Now that you're there, you cannot leave us behind. Thank you.
let's take a look at the motion, right? It says that this House believes that beneficiaries of state or state subsidized specialized education have an obligation to contribute significantly, not should, and also if the motion states that you must significantly give back to your local fields, you won't get the benefits if you don't actually create a policy that ensures that everyone has that obligation. And that the weirdest thing about the last response that came from the speaker before me is that it also is in tension with the speaker before her. Because it sounds like your prime minister believes it's a policy debate and gave us 2 prongs in his policy, whereas now you're saying it's a value judgment. We don't get what the government side really wants to do. First of all, I will defend against the speaker before me, and then I'll deal with the clash of principles before moving on to my arguments about how that reinforces Amrit about how the communities get a lot more on our side. First, let me defend a lot of the things that came, a lot of the misrepresentations that came to the speaker before me. The first thing I will do, let's go on this backtrack about the policy, right? We think that they won't get their benefits of raised awareness. They won't get their benefits of better facilities. They won't get their benefits, a lot of benefits that they say are so difficult to get in current status quo if they don't force people to significantly be put into their fields. The thing that we said about Samuel Eto'o is that he chose to go to Shanghai and train there and train under Chelsea and only got all the benefits of that because he chose to do that. And even if he never came back to Cameroon, never went back to Cameroon, he still brought a lot of significant popularity to Cameroon. That's the way that he chose to contribute. Even Lee Chong-wei, right? He had a cost-benefit analysis in staying and competing in the Olympics because he knew that badminton in Malaysia was something that he knew he could succeed in, right? If that he didn't have any success within Malaysia, he would have chosen to leave. Your policy forces people to stay even if they know that it's not lucrative for them as an individual. Yours forces individuals into failure even if they don't want to. But here's the second thing, right? We said that no one will join on our side, that no one will join on your side. Why? Because let's look at what Amrit explained about who really goes into these schools. These are people who were locked out of an education system that is academic, locked out of an education system where there's a mold by which you must fit into, whereas you had special potential in sports or in classical arts. This means that when the government created a classical arts school, it was in compensation of their failure in the education system and not as a special privilege to you. This means that in their thought process, they only entered into that school when because they were too poor, because they had no other option. The world in your side is that you now have an added barrier by which they choose not to enter into your schools. People will not enter into your schools and give the talent that you want, or they'll end up going to really privileged private-owned schools and take up a lot of money to enter into those schools, right? We don't think we don't think we're defending less people. They are defending the less people. The last thing I would say is that it's also principally aligned if you want direct impact, that you could incentivize these people to do so, or to stay into their local fields. That's perfectly fine. The more lucrative we can pull in these people, that's great too. But we cannot force these people because you wouldn't get the benefits if you force them, right? If you say that there's an obligation every time you get something from the state, why don't poor people who get welfare, would you force them to give that higher taxes to them because they benefit directly from that? Or would you force people who are in scientific courses to do that as well? We don't think they're principally aligned on their side. So this really goes into my next clash on the principles, right? The premise on their side is about reciprocity. I explained to you that the state is doing this in compensation of you, and that when they say that the state has other concerns, what concern is more important than the education of a child who literally was locked out of the education that you constructed and you created? We think that insofar as this person is failing in their school, it is your concern to make the best facilities for that school, for that child. It's your responsibility to make sure that that child is at the forefront, not things like militaries or infrastructure. This means that it's not enough to just say and shirk off the responsibility by saying that the state had other concerns. We think that we need to ensure the best compensation for these children, and ensure that they actually enter into these schools. But so we don't think it's about reciprocity. We think that the state owes you an obligation, and you have no extra added obligation above and beyond anyone else. We think that they fail in this principle clash. But the second thing they say is that there's an obligation because you benefited from society. We don't think so. First of all, society actively creates barriers against you when it comes to classical arts, when it comes to sports. Society isn't one that's nurturing, Amanda. We think that a lot of times this means that your parents are the ones who tell you not to enter, who tell you that no, let's not go into these schools because you're not going to get a lucrative career. The only way you can fight against that societal stigma is by saying that the state subsidized education is subsidized and you're not bonded to it. This means that you can convince your parents to let you enter into these schools and have debating as well as like your education or sports as well as education is by telling them that there's no bond to it. The moment there's a bond, your parents are never gonna let you enter into these schools to begin with. But the second thing is that even if the society actually helped you into being what you are, we think that you're more likely to harm the society than help develop it. Why? Because every time that you are forced into doing something and you know you could have had a more lucrative job doing something else and like having be a doctor while also playing sports, we think that's when you will regret this what the state has done and you're going to harm this development even more, right? But we also tell you that development is better on our side. You are better able to choose that. Why do we say that? Because this is because a lot of times when you're talking about the community development, you need to increase that knowledge through perhaps going overseas or entering into fields outside of your country or bringing the prestige back after you succeeded in another country. The same as Samuel Eto'o did, right? But we don't think that they're able to do that because they trap and lock people within these communities and they don't allow them outside, right? This means that the tutoring that you give is one as an echo chamber where you don't increase knowledge, but you keep providing the same limitations of knowledge within their world. We also tell you that investors also won't decide to enter into your country because it's always going to be the same people within those countries that don't help you develop. We don't think that the analysis on how murals and street art suddenly raise awareness will actually create an environment for these people that is helpful or nurturing. In fact, they're only going to metastasize within their own communities and make more harm within them.
In order for SAIT government to win today's debate, we just need to prove to you that these individuals who are successful had some form of contribution from the local arena or from the state itself. That's the reason why that they do have an obligation to give back. They can't argue to us that they can't go out of the country and things like that. We are fine with that. So if you now were to have a deal with someone in America, that's fine. As long as she does what she does right now, when she comes back and plays for festivals in Malaysia itself, like the Seni Festival, where she performed with local artists as well. We think that in itself is a significant contribution. That is something that we do want under SAIT government. So the ability for you to achieve your dreams as an artist is still existent. But the point in which you do that, you also need to give back to the community in which that started and that propelled you to be successful at the end of the day. So two things I'll prove to you in today's debate. Number one, how the state, how they are an obligation towards the state, and number two, towards the local talent itself. So let's talk about the state, right? So they were lucky enough to get the opportunity to be in those certain schools. We recognize that it is the state's responsibility, that the state did screw up in the sense that they don't have enough schools and things like that. The question then becomes, how do you better solve it? Within the point in which you were lucky enough to get the opportunity, it also means that you need to help back. But second level of analysis to this is that when you have more people who are successful and they come back and give to people on the ground and give back to the local arena, that is when you gain awareness. It's something that Amanda told you already. What happens if you gain awareness? That is when the states also have an incentive to give back. So the states will have more schools, realizing that more people are into it as well. So we think that having the obligation towards the state in of itself is okay, and it's something that is justified for these individuals. Yeah, sure.
So obviously this debate is about an obligation that exists. If it's true that it's lucrative, people will choose to stay. You have to defend a scenario. People say they don't want to stay, but you force them to because you think it's beneficial, and then they don't become successful. Why does that benefit local development?
Okay, so your argument is that they don't want to stay, right? So we're okay with them leaving as long as they can endorse. So even if I was in overseas, I can still say, look at this person in my hometown. Or maybe I can do a music video with that person. Things like that. Maybe even if I'm a footballer, after I retire, I can train that individual. I can train the academy that he's in. We think that you don't necessarily have to stay in the local community to give back to the local community. You can do it no matter where you are. We think that's why the obligation is something that is fair. We don't think that it is very taxing towards these individuals in and of itself. But number two, we think they were just lucky. So it could have been anyone else. It could have been that individual that you're gonna give back to at the end of the day. We think that it's fair. So I mean, if I was a successful person and there's someone else who needs training, that very person who needs training could have been me. It could have been me who's successful. We think that's why it's fair for us to ask these individuals who are successful to give them an obligation to help back, because they were just like under the good circumstances to get the opportunity in the first place. Sit down. Third level, on the local field. We think that the local field, the local arena lets you exhibit your talents in the first place. So let's take an example of debating. So the very fact that there is a debating scene gives people like Mifzal or Mer to show their talents, to show how good they are, to get to bigger levels, to debate in different like arenas, right? Those are kinds of things that exist because of your local talent. So we think it is fair for you to give back. Just like how these debaters do already, like coaching different schools. We think that it isn't very taxing in the end of the day. We think that they do have an obligation because they are only good by doing those kinds of things. You're only good by being involved in the very scene in the first place. And the fourth level, we don't think that you training somehow apprehends the ability for you to be successful. If anything, training and coaching another individual also improves you. So if I were to train someone else to play football, I will also know how to help myself as well, how to be a better coach, how to be a better footballer as a whole. And also, after I retire, I can also give back. So we don't think that it's something that's really taxing towards these individuals, or we don't see how it is unfair as side opposition were to say. Yeah.
Yeah, so like Didier Drogba, right, who came from a country called Ivory Coast, who's famous for slavery, for cocoa plantation. He brought hope for football, he won many medals, he became one of the inspirational individuals. In your work, you'll be incurring more tax and you end up becoming a tuition teacher. Why is it fair to do that?
Okay, so after he retires, he's probably not going to have anything to do also. So he can train. If anything, that is a form of him to get money. But also, he just needs to be there, right? He just needs to promote the Cameroon Football Club or the Cameroon Football Academy. He doesn't need to do a lot. He doesn't need to be there the whole time. He can still focus on his career. All he has to do is contribute back in a certain way that will help the community as well. In a certain way that will give opportunity to those young individuals who need the opportunity, who wish to be just like Didier Drogba. We think we don't see how this extra tax thing is something that's hard anyway. Drogba earns so much money. So a lot of these individuals are capable also as well, right, to give back to individuals on the ground. So what's the comparative? On the other side, they claim that individuals will now stop going to schools or stop going to the specialized schools at the end of the day. We don't think so. And like this idea about loans, we didn't actually quite get it. If anything, people will still go towards it. Like their comparative of that, I have to go to school and I have to also go to sports schools. We don't think that exists. If anything, you give that opportunity for more people to be invested into it, because you realize that people who were successful will help you. So that is why you will have more parents advising their children to go ahead. So the point in which I am in school, that's why I have other extra mentors besides my teachers in school teaching me and helping me in this specific sport. So if anything, there'll be more people going in. Then the second idea about bonding and scholarships and how you'll never have bonding. The thing about why is this harmful is that number one, you will never have people or investors giving scholarships at the end of the day, because realizing that they themselves can't get those benefits when you are not bonded to them anymore. So you'll have lesser scholarships under your side of the house. If anything, that is harmful to the development of every single young individual and the local arena in and of itself. Yeah. So what's the best case scenario that will happen under side of government? When you give the people, when you make them have the obligation to give back to the local arena, the very arena that started and spearheaded their success, the very arena where they started to realize who they were as an individual to be successful. We think that is when you help younger individuals aspire to be them as well. We're saying you help younger individuals be a better version of who they are. We think that already tells you that there are practical benefits towards it. But even if it's hard to weigh which side gives more practical benefits, all we have to do is prove their obligation in the very first place. We already did this in Amanda's and Amar's speech, when we told you that they got the benefits from the state, when they got opportunities, when they got special tools, when they got an Olympic-sized swimming pool, when those other individuals did not. We recognize that the state could not do this, thus we push this obligation towards those individuals who did get the opportunity, who did get those spots. We think that it is fair for us to tell them to give back to those individuals. We beg to propose.
I'm glad this round will be live streamed because I'm going to share something very personal about me. I coached Amrit. Her debating life, is it linked with me? Yes. But I, as an individual, do not own her. I do not own any of her success stories. I do not own any of her progress because she is successful because she is Amrit. And like many of these individuals, the state do not own your success or hold you at ransom infinitely just because at one point your paths cross back. And at many points that I asked a POI about why are the metrics towards contribution, why does it need to be direct contribution in the form of additional tax and these tutoring services, which they were not willing to defend, they were not willing to give us an answer. Somehow there's an arbitrary standard as to giving back to society, and this needs to be solved right now. But the second thing that we need to clarify in this debate is the policy that came out, or some sort of a word that came out from the government bench. Like at first, it was you have an additional burden to incur taxes, right? And then it was like optional. You can leave or not leave. When we said, look, it must come at the cost of your self-investment. But then when I asked the POI about Didier Drogba, and I compared it, why aren't all of his existent success not be measured as a meaningful one, given that he brought so many limelight to a land that did not have any hope for football? They said, no. Samuel Eto'o, once he retire, he will be able to do this. Now, the problem with this policy is that I don't know at which point will they accrue the benefit. If you're telling me that you only accrue the benefit once Didier Drogba retires, that's 50 years from now. That literally the profit is meaningless, right? If you argue that, this one is something that can be negotiated, you'll be overseas and still do it, then the policy is marginal. Then the effect won't be the same. So I think this is a very confusing debate, and let us clarify this one by one. Let us clarify what is the stance of the opposition. Let us be very clear. Opposition is not saying that specialized school is bad, but the education system in general, it is bad. Because the state made a value judgment on deciding that academics means test scores. And sports and artistic expression, it does not equate to being valuable. That's the result why individuals are often discriminated because of the birth lottery. They don't have the ability to be meaningful because the state defines what's meaningful and leaves them out of the equation, right? Therefore, states create special schools like this because these are the only spaces in which these individuals can be able to live a meaningful life. And this is what the principle that was set up very clearly by the leader of opposition. But this burden was challenged by opposition by saying that our states have other concern. Yes, this is the most, confusing part from the government bench. If the effects are shared equally, why does one individual who is the victim of the circumstance have additional burden to incur the cost? If the system or if the country as a whole is suffering, why is the cost not shared equally and only to some selected individual? And I think that's the question in which they weren't able to answer. Unfortunately, this debate, or fortunately, this debate rested on three things. Firstly, the principal liability. Secondly, is this good for the players? And thirdly, is this good for the community? Let's visit one by one. Who assumes this responsibility? And as I explained earlier, it was due to the structural problem that was constructed by state failure and not the individual on the ground means that the state has to incur this cost. And I think the conditions of your suffering, and I think the point I'm trying to make is that this individual, before they were athletes,
they were victims, right? And the biggest argument for them is that, oh, you took a spot from another individual. I think this dismisses the entire argument about merit. Maybe this guy worked to be there. The state only provided infrastructure, but I think it was your individual talent, individual hard work that allowed you to do it. But they are also argue that how do you solve this issue, right? Because it's not by attacking some individuals who do well, but it's actually you need to garner support on individuals on the ground. It's not by attacking the most vulnerable people on the ground, right? Then the strongest argument that came out from government was that you cannot leave us behind because you are here because of me, therefore I get to own you. But we told you that the contribution of this individual come in many shapes and form. Sometimes that getting a medal in Olympic means that this country as a whole can benefit. Like Didier Drogba being able to be good. Like, okay, I'll give you another example. Lithuania is an extremely small country, right? The population, there are some individuals carry 2 jobs because that's how much the state needs people. But it produced some of the best basketball players ever. And it was a result of some individual being able to exit their structural problems and enter the world. This one individual going and playing in the NBA means that more individuals in Lithuania gets an opportunity to be able to think that NBA or basketball is able to liberate their life. This means that they do contribute back to the community, and their success means that they contribute back to the individuals as a whole, right? And that's why it's a problem. Is there any POI? I'm concerned that you guys are not giving POI. Okay, never mind. Is it good for the players, right? Now, let me just conclude. I think that at the first issue, I'm able to show that the responsibility is not unique. The responsibility can exist in many forms, and this additional tax is extremely unfair. But let's move on to the practical outcomes. Is it good for the players or artists? First of all, their talent needs to be gauged. Their talent needs to perform at the highest level and no additional burden, right? You can't be focusing on what is my community project this week? Instead, you should be training and you should be investing all your money in yourself and getting the better equipment and etc. But in your world, it will be harm because there are some individuals who might not join, who feel like this is not worth it. I don't feel like I'll get much out of it. They won't join you, or they might incur private loans and all of these harms that Amrit talked about when completely unengaged. I think that's bad for players. And for some artists, these are individuals who aren't given even this debate was highly hinged on athletes because they assume athletes are going to be successful. But for artists, there is no certainty that art is good. In fact, in modern Malaysia and Singapore, art is the most underemployed, underpaid bunch of graduates, which means that these individuals, you are literally harming them before they even enter. That's why they won't even enter your field. But this is good for the community. I already explained a bit about scouting and why scouting is much better on our side because the success of the individual means that the groups will just go there, right? But the next thing I'd like to talk about is that the primary problem in modern Malaysia is that a lot of our best athletes and best sportsmen are currently engineers, lawyers, and people who are pursuing other things because they just feel like it's just a curricular sport. It is not worth my time. For those individuals, they will never change. And the more individuals who want to join your field, they will not change as well. Ladies and gentlemen, this world becomes extremely unfair when state coerces you into believing that it's an obligation. Like I'll tell you this, it's your choice and you are a victim of your choice, and a victim shouldn't be able to incur more cost as a result of state necessity. Will this society move on? Yes, it will move on. And that cost should not be uniquely be transferred only on one individual, but it should be the fault of us as a whole.
I'm going to first start my reply with talking about the Gov's model. Because as much as the second speaker says it's not a model debate, your first, second, and third speaker give me many different ways in which this model or this obligation can be carried out. And in all 3 speeches, it was a contradiction to the speaker before that. I'll actually explain to you why it's a contradiction. Because in some speeches, they say it's a significant financial amount, then they say you must significantly spend training time. And the third speaker, no, it's negotiable. You can go overseas, you can endorse, or you come back for 1 or 2 sessions. And then when it's not negotiable, it can be delayed when you retire. The common characteristics with this model is it's not significant, it is delayed, it is not heavy, and it's negotiable. All these things mean that they don't get the benefits that they want to. Because it is so dilapidated, our communities are so screwed over that you cannot make it negotiable, transferable, and insignificant. Then your people will opt out, they won't transfer their obligation. As much as you make it a principle, but if you don't make it enforceable, people will opt out and you don't get your benefits. So their model or their stance or whatever you want to call it on the gov doesn't actually get the benefits they speak about. So just in argumentation, you can't make all your arguments relying on it because you don't have a damn thing to rely on. The second is principle. If you look back at your notes, only 3 things they say in response to the principle. You're lucky, and no one else got it. Lucky you got it, so you have an obligation. Or they say that other interests, poverty alleviation, the military, and therefore they have to do that first. Or the third is you benefited your community. Lucky you became so talented because everyone invested in you. All these 3 things are false and never got engaged with when we responded to them. Because we said you weren't lucky that you got the spot. You were a person who went through a significant process of being poor, discounted. It wasn't luck. You needed this compensation and you got it. The lucky person, the rich people don't have to do this obligation, who can afford arts and still do debating, right? But the second are people, the state has other interests. I'm sure they have military and other poverty alleviation methods. But I don't think that justifies why this individual person must suffer. I think a state decided to prioritize other things. Isn't there a reason for this person to say, yeah, maybe you should invest in poverty alleviation. I am the poor person here you're supposed to invest in. Why on earth does this interest mean less? They didn't explain why. But insofar you say the community benefited them, Felice was quite clear. The community doesn't even like you. You're not a talented artist or a singer or a sports person. You are a struggling student who needs this loan to become the talented individual. So communities make it harder and harder. And if anything, communities you don't owe communities an obligation. Communities owe you an obligation because they failed you so much. No responses on the pressure of people to push you out of art, then there is the pressure to enter. No one tells you to be Picasso because Picasso is absolutely shit. The principle is simple. People are not lucky. States have other interests, but it does not mean this person ought to be suffering more than the average individual who pays taxation. I think that principle was unresponded in the side of government. But second, in terms of development, if you know, they said you should be in the local area and play in local arenas, so maybe you can get scouted, maybe you win the Olympics and you get a gold medal, and that means you get all these lucrative benefits. The premise of all their argumentation was that must be success. There must be some individual enabling of their talent. If it's true that this person didn't want to, or saw it as more lucrative to opt into other sports avenues they were more invested in, that better developmental program, and you forced them to opt into this version of training, they are unlikely to be successful. They are likely to play in local sports arena, not get those gold medals, not get the Olympic standards that you say you want, and therefore your development becomes worse. But at best, even if I believe all of this, they have less important talent in their world, because people make trade-offs. If you're going to bond them or you're going to make them after they retire bonded to their world, they won't be a sports person, they won't be an artist. As a result, you either have less talent to work with or you get worse off talent that end up hating the jobs they want to. Sanjay wants you to believe that if you train, you also become better. But if you train in a place you don't want to, with a strategy you don't like, with coaches and communities that are unsupportive because you were forced to be there, I think that training is more harmful to both the people you are training and to yourself. I think this means the development is worse in their world, if not non-existent, because people opt out of your program. In conclusion, we think our development might be long-term. As a result, maybe we think Cameron benefited from Samuel Eto'o. We use the example because it just shows the power of a person that is divorced from state failure, that can do it independently. I think at this point, if you don't prove that local communities benefit from it, the side of government loses the debate.
So this debate was a rather confusing one. And I will take the blame for that. Like I recognize and I acknowledge that there were several slips of tongue that made things very confusing. But if you look closely at your notes, feel free to penalize my scores. But if you look closely at your notes, you will realize that the things that we have been saying are the same things that we have been saying all along. This debate is value judgment because you cannot be policying how exactly what a significant contribution looks like and who can do it. That is the value judgment part. But the questions you need to ask yourself is, does this obligation exist or not? Balancing with whether or not it lies with the state or whatever. And number two, does this obligation help the local art field, and trade that off with whatever the individual artist incurs, right? So those are the questions I will answer and address in the reply. Does this obligation exist? Now, this is where it got a bit confusing, right? Because they were telling us about how if the state didn't do anything for you, you didn't access those subsidies and scholarship, you had to make it on your own, then you suffered. You don't owe anything to the state. But look, The motion clearly says like if you are subsidized, that means you access those subsidies and those benefits. I think this is where it got confusing because they said we have like a bigger obligation for them. But look, this is how exactly that played out, right? If you were unsubsidized, but you were still a result of the local scene and all those things, you have an obligation to the scene, but your threshold is lower because you didn't directly benefit from the subsidies. But the debate is about people who directly benefited from the subsidies. So we think it's fair that their obligation and the threshold of burden they need to contribute back to is one that government decided that it was, right? We think that is fine, and we think that they never engaged properly with that aspect of the debate. So we believe that yes, the duty is there because the scene helped you in terms of opportunities, in awareness, and the value that society now perceives towards your art field. Like without the local scene, it would be much, much worse. We understand they're underappreciated now, but there would be no recognition without the local art scene, without the Damansara Performing Arts Center, right? So the duty is there. But what exactly does it look like? This is where you trade it off with the cost that the individual artist incurs. They told us that you suffer huge advantages because you have to give back in terms of higher financial contributions. You have to come back and tutor, and you know you're for so much people aren't going to want to opt in. Why is it your burden to fix it? Like, look, we told you that you exercise discretion. So what are the things that we're okay with? We gave you very pertinent examples like Lee Chong-wei. We're okay with him going overseas to further his career competing in international tournaments, but he comes back and he's based here and he grows the local badminton scene. We're okay with Yuna, who is now based in US but started out here, who came back just recently last month to participate in the local music festival, right? We're pretty sure she had other better lucrative deals, but she chose to come back. And that is a significant contribution in our scene. So the question here is, their obligation exists. Some people exercise it, some people don't. Is the world better when everybody exercise it because we believe that you should? Because the obligation lies there, right? We believe that, yeah, it's true. Amrit is very talented, but if we had more people like Max who were obligated to coach, you would have more Amrits and the debate scene would be better, right? So we think that it's better. But number two, how does this help the local art field? Look at the things that the community offers you. The appreciation. Without these things, like if you have a better appreciation, this is something that they never engage with that we gave you, is that more people are aware for it, more people will opt into this. And this actually creates more impetus, like Sanji talked about, right? If the state's duty is to cater to the biggest amount of people possible, the moment you generate enough interest for you to become a recognizable, considerable group within society, that is when you can force the state to then additionally subsidize you or tend to directly help you. But look, in this world, nobody is going to suddenly come out and say, you should be an artist instead of a doctor, especially like you're Chinese or whatever. But in our world, you have better access to those things because even if the state is not providing it right now, contributing artists are. Thank you.